Good evening, everyone. It is evening here in New York City, and I'm here with Wendy Lipson for the Reiki Rock Stars episode number 3. I've had so much fun doing the first and second episodes, and I can't wait to really get started with Wendy, who is truly a Reiki rock star and who has been practicing one form of energy healing or another for pretty much 50 years. Isn't that true, Wendy?
Yep, it is. It is.
And
Although it
how did you
feels less. Go ahead.
um how did you get started? That's what I want to know.
Okay, well, there are many versions, but to try to be concise, which isn't easy, uh, I always felt there was something that I had to transmit through my hands. I didn't have English for it, and I was in the closet about it. But as I got out of my adolescence and in my later teens, I just had to express it. And so when I moved to New York in about 1974, I just pounced on a course from Janet McCrae at NYU called Therapeutic Touch, and that was it. Then I started to fly. And then sometime later, when I had had some major surgery and was left with very bad pain, I decided to see if I could deal with it holistically. And someone did 20 minutes of Reiki on my thighs on her bed. And that was it. I was attuned within 7 days. I
Wait
took
a minute.
level 1.
Wow. So, first of all, before you came to New York City, where were you raised?
It's a small city on Lake Ontario in upstate New York called Rochester.
Rochester. Yeah,
And and I came
Rochester is
down,
pretty.
yeah, and I came down in the early 70s, and then things really became ignited because I felt more freedom to go into those unnamed zones.
Exactly.
And at that
Yeah,
point, you didn't talk about what you did at a party, you just did your stuff.
yeah,
And then I always got jobs so that I could make my own schedule. And I fed my healer's habit and then became a full-time healer as soon as I could. And so it
that's
was different
amazing.
stages and different modalities on top of modalities, creating
Yeah,
some of my own. But Reiki, I feel, is the mother modality. And from there, I always describe when I'm teaching level 1 that it opens the doors, door after door after door. You start with the one door, you let Reiki in. We say we find Reiki, but Reiki finds us. So
yeah.
it's about you, but really you begin to feel the interconnectedness and realize it's not about you. You're one delicious speck of a sea of humanity. And so it goes from the micro to the macro, and the interconnectedness is what heals.
That's a great description, and I love your story so far because in a way it's like the archetypal kind of country girl comes to the big city to make it big, and but not on Broadway or but spiritually, the spiritual big time, and and then you know you said that you took you had, and this is also another thing that so many healers go through. You get sick, right? You have some sort of challenge. With me, it was addiction that really was my wounded healer path, but um, you know. What's her name? Donna Eden. They told her she was gonna die in like a couple months, and then she's like started doing stuff with her hands, and she just, I mean, she's one of the greatest healers that ever lived. And it's so you had your own kind of wounded healer path with this, and I want to ask you, like, when you took the level 1 and 2, or just whatever it was that what year was that? Because Reiki didn't really become popular in New York City until like the 90s.
Well,
Because nobody,
way earlier. I don't know, but I do know that my teacher, who was a beautiful person, I learned what grace was from her. She was not a long-time teacher. And as a result, I took the gifts from her that I received, and then I trained with many, many Reiki masters in order to gather my nuts and expand and deepen. So I bless Mary Fran O'Neill as being my first Reiki teacher. I don't know if it was in the 80s or 70s. I'd have to look it up. But everything was a progression. And I think even when you go level to level to level, it's all divine timing. And so learning about grace, the depth of it from her, was a wonderful way in which to build information and elevating vibration on and on and on.
yeah.
I'm not,
She
I
must,
can't give you the date though.
yeah, she must have been, one of the students of maybe one of the students of the 22 masters that Takata taught.
Let me tell you, her Reiki master was a nun.
Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Roman
yeah.
Catholic?
Yeah, yeah. So talk about being in the closet. I mean, you know, she had this renegade nun as her teacher, which I loved being in that lineage. And
Wow, that is,
though I
that's
have
re
no idea where her teacher received it, but um, I do know that being taught by these highly religious folks really had its benefits. And I cherish
so.
every moment of the
Yeah.
teaching.
But when you say grace, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because we all hear this phrase, divine grace. I tell
Okay,
my students, divine grace is always available for you. It's not just when you're a good boy. It's always there. Um,
right.
but
It's
what is
it's
it?
a generosity of spirit. It's um, an open heart. It's the absence of ego. It is the presence of source, unfettered by greed. It is the beauty of the energy and the unlimitedness, and no crap gets in the way.
Yeah,
And the average human is trained to work from the ego base rather than the open heart. And Mary Fran was this gem of a woman who, in every way, was one of the most generous teachers I've ever had. And when she didn't know, she said, I don't know.
yeah,
When she needed something from you, she asked in the most gentlest of ways. I was always happy to give her anything I could. And she was an angelic being who I felt flew from source into my path. She didn't know a lot about Reiki. I knew it, but I knew she was a gift of that, and that I could always teach myself, which I did. I taught myself through other people. I went to different schools of Reiki. I saw what resonated, I saw what did not. And I just crafted and sculpted how I wanted to be in doing what we do. I was alone, but that aloneness also helped to train me to be the teacher I am today. But graciousness has to be a big part of the teacher package, and it's in me forever. And I thank her wherever she is in the cosmos. She's on the other side, but I'm hoping she's with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love the way you describe grace. And it comes from within. It comes from within, and rather than, in a lot of religious teachings, it's almost like they want you to worship something outside of you, right? And that's something that I never really bought totally into, even though I was raised in like a traditional religious, uh, you know, church. But it was once I got into my teens, and I was part of the hippie generation with the peace and love and all that kind of stuff.
Me
And I
too.
really started to question all that. And I became very interested. And by the time I was 14, 15, I was reading about Zen Buddhism and um, the Bhagavad Gita and all that kind of stuff. And we wanted like the real experience of enlightenment rather than like the watered down, Western religious stuff. And so I was always interested in this stuff, but it wasn't until I really got in recovery that I was able to. Yeah, I took workshops and I read books and stuff like that. And I then when I got in recovery, then my own abilities were able to, to blossom, to flower. And I tell my students, like, everybody has the seed of Reiki within them. It just needs to be watered. It needs to be nourished and cultivated. And then and I had suppressed psychic abilities that came up.
Yeah.
It was a perfect fit for me because I had actually been meditating, every day, which most of my life I had some sort of meditation that I was doing, mostly mantras. But I um I was feeling the energy in my hands. I was feeling just like you. I knew that my hands had energy, and of course my mother was a nurse practitioner and she did all kinds of charity work, and I kind of inherited her psychic abilities and her kind of values. We need to be of service in the world. We need to make a difference. There's too much suffering, all this kind of stuff. I grew up around that. And so when I was meditating, I would feel the energy in my hands. I was reading all these books, and then there was a book where the woman said the first thing she actually got training in was Reiki. She always knew she was a healer. And I never finished the rest of the book. I was like, Reiki, oh, that sounds really interesting to me. It was
Hmm.
Japanese, and I'm actually 25% Japanese. So, and then long story short, I asked for a sign, and then this woman just walked into my life and said, this was like a meeting, a recovery support group meeting I was in. She said, I don't do meetings in New York City anymore. I live in New Jersey, but I just happen to be on the Upper West Side to get my level 2 teachings from my Reiki teacher. And then I went around to, I said, that was my sign. I knew I was supposed to do Reiki, and the rest is history. And that was Louisiana Zen was my first teacher. She was great,
Yeah.
really,
It
really
finds
amazing.
us. It finds us. I think, we come from a personal, limited stance, but I think the fact that you were attuned at that moment was just right, and that your
Absolutely.
contribution your contribution goes from there. So yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, and the everything that I'm doing now is part of who I always was. You know,
Hmm.
it just it had to be facilitated. I found Reiki, as far as I'm concerned, is the greatest healing lineage on the planet. And there's a universality to it. There's
Hmm.
people that get attracted to it from all walks. Some of these people have never done anything spiritual in their lives. They hear about Reiki and it's like, oh, I need to do that. And then suddenly they start to experience the actual feelings of being enlightened, and having this boundless compassion and all these wonderful qualities that you read about in the
Yes.
books. You think, oh, it's like we should all strive to be like Jesus or Buddha. Well, you can be like Jesus or Buddha. That's what they were all trying to teach us in the first place. Don't just worship me. Do, if you want to be like me, you got to do what I do.
Yep, we're all fractals of the divine. And I like the juicy individual things too about each one of us because it's all a contribution. And like I always say, this is the modality that everyone is pre-wired to do. It's already in us. And the Reiki teacher just helps to turn on the light. But you've got all the wiring you need. You're ready to glow. And as you glow and share that, then you relocate parts of you that are ready to be expressed, that were dormant. So it isn't just about healing, it's about reactivating all the expressions of your soul in any lifetime dimension or plane. And it can start with one Reiki class with a mild interest. You don't even have to be enthusiastic, but just being present, we are given these messages of
Yeah,
potentials, possibilities. So I always find it exciting to teach. It never gets old because you have a new universe in front of you each time.
yeah. And
Yeah.
also, we learn from our students, and I have learned begrudgingly to welcome challenges into my life and students that are a little bit, feisty, or that ask me a question that I can't, you know what I mean? It's like that to me, it's you're not just teaching, but you should always be learning and be in a beginner's mind. And here we are. I mean, we're both like older people, right?
Yep.
Um, I'm not going to ask you to reveal your age, but we are elders, and it's our duty to have legacy, and to share this with as many people as we can. And at even being as old as I am, I am I have no thoughts of retiring ever. You know, uh, I'd be bored and miserable, because I don't have to go to work every day. I wake up and I love the work that I do, and I know that
Yeah.
it's making a difference, and I know that it's I feel this wonderful fulfillment from seeing a student that actually embraces the teachings and runs with it, and you see their lives transform. And I love, one of the things I always do in class is like, okay, now you're going to treat me.
Mhm.
And because I want my students to not to just, I do not want to be worshipped ever. I'm not a guru. I don't have all the answers. No, I am just a guy that loves Reiki. I know how to teach it, and I think I'm pretty good at teaching it too. But I and when I'm teaching Reiki Master Teacher, I have my students attune me, because if they can attune me, then they can attune anybody. That gives them confidence, because they'll come in thinking, "Oh, this Jordy guy, he's so amazing." And well, maybe I am in some ways, but so are you. And that's the other thing I always do is honor, love, and praise people. You know, because people usually don't get enough of that in their daily lives. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
it's that is we need to do more of that to our friends, to our family, to our students, to our coworkers. And that is that's a good thing to do, because everybody is worthy of praise. Even if they've had, horrible, made terrible mistakes in their life, still have a divine soul. You still have abilities. You still can feel love. So
And I always see part of my job as being a loving witness, and just being a human witness in the same species. And I always say, walking beside your student as a
yeah,
loving witness or your client, it gives them room to create their own healing process. We're just a manifestation of their intention to be healed.
right. Yeah, and what they admire in us is already within them, and it's just needs to be encouraged and recognized, and supported.
Mhm.
I love teaching, and I I'm always teaching. I mean, in one way or another. If I, and I'm sure you experience this too, like I love to have clients that want to work with me on a regular basis, because then you can see them changing, you can see them growing, you can see them getting better. And I've had clients that I've had to basically, I call it talking them off the Brooklyn Bridge, where they're going through something really challenging and they're just overwhelmed and they can't see a way out of it. And I like to have I like to have people like that, because I can be maybe that one person in their life that tells them maybe it's not so bad. I can see a way out of it for you. And hearing that from me, that helps you see a way out of it. And it's that is a really beautiful thing to be able to do for people, is to is to be able to hold their hand and say, yes, you can pour your heart out to me, you can vent to me, and I will listen, and I will never judge you. Right. And just like you
That's
said, be a loving witness and
one of the things, yes,
hold space with.
exactly, exactly. And the way I frequently describe one of the benefits of Reiki is when a person is in that place where all they can perceive is darkness. And then after they get up from even a silent table treatment, they then can see this glimmer of light away from the hole they're in, and it makes it easier for them to cut their own path to that light. And Reiki provides that shimmering point silently, and it heals people even where there's no language, to open up their vision. And then the rest of getting back into balance is accessible.
Because that's really mind, body, spirit wants to be happy, wants to
Mhm.
be in an optimal state of health and happiness and wealth and everything, love and everything. And that's the way we're hardwired. Our bodies, if you cut your finger, your body's going to heal. It's going to scab over, and then the scab goes away, and then it's all better. You know, so everybody is their own healer. And
Mhm.
then you have the clients that like they they glom onto you, and they want you to have all the answers, but they're not doing their part of the healing. And we had to kind of gently say, listen, you really need to do, you know, actually use your Reiki every day, because you're not doing it, and then then I have to, um, do damage control on you. And it's a big part of teaching is to really help people become empowered, and to, listen to their own, that the still silent voice within, their intuition, and rather than just like wanting everybody else to tell them how to do and what to do it, and be some sort of authority figure, which I never really got along well with authority figures myself. And I don't want to be an authority figure for anybody. I want to be an assistant, a support, and somebody that encourages, and that, like I said, that praises you, and that helps you feel really good about yourself and about life in general. And just the energy of Reiki itself does all that, you know.
Well, I think inherent in the energy, if I could describe it, would be that forgiveness is already assumed. That what would it feel like if we just felt forgiven right this second? What
Yeah.
what could that unlock? And so again, I learn grace from all of this. I see the non-judgmental, consistently unconditional love, which elevates my own personal crap. And it's been my teacher to watch this even, loving, generous playing field of source energy. And you realize there really is no room for negativity, judgment, class level awareness. It's just this even field of love. That is my teacher.
Um, yeah, I tell my students, when you take level 3, I call it level 3 the way I teach. I'm using the ICRT manuals. Do you have your own manuals or?
Yes,
Oh, okay. Good. That must have been hard work to make your, well, of
I
course you
hate
probably
it.
worked on
I
it.
hate it. I don't like all of that stuff. I can't stand it. It hurts. But over the years, I get so frustrated because this book is great until it gets to that chapter. That book
Yeah,
is great. They all have wonderful things, but I find certain things missing, and it's me wanting so much to give them everything I can, and it's my stuff that I can't say any one book is the book, but I have to bless all of the books I've read. I bless Diane Stein for being Diane, you know. I bless Walter for being Walter. Thank you, Walter.
Walter
But
Lubeck.
yeah, but there's not one book, and I can't get to writing an official, you know, published tome, but I do have my own manuals, and I'm not even totally happy with them. So I
Yeah,
need to put the human soul part of it, human to human, so that
yeah,
if there's anything in the book that's not great, we can kind of soften it by the human transmission of the information. I'm
yeah.
not even thrilled with my own manuals completely.
Yeah,
The
I think the
human
IC,
transmission is the main thing, I think.
yeah, yeah, I think the ICRT manuals are great, but I will actually say in different parts of math, I don't really agree with these saying
Yeah,
here,
you
and this
have
is
to.
why.
Right.
This
And
is
so they
why.
get
Yeah,
to choose. I always say you get to choose. You could you could swallow this 100%. You could take a little from my opinion, and you make up your own mind, and you will see what works. Your experience is your greatest teacher.
yeah, yeah. And I share my own experiences in class, and yes, I mean we use the manual for certain things, and but I don't expect my students to read the whole manual and memorize. No, no, it's just sort of a guidebook. But it's I want to ask you a few more things about your practice.
Sure.
Now, um, back in the day, and really I'm talking about before the pandemic. I don't know
Uh,
about you, but I used to, you know, have a space where it was Madison Wellness Center for 11 years, which is pretty well known on Madison and 33rd Street. And it was Pat and Glenn Scarpelli, the chiropractor and his wife, that ran that place, and they're very well known and very, very well loved. But now, at first, I was seeing my clients at the old TRS on 32nd Street, right up
I
Park
did a
Avenue.
few things there, yeah.
Yeah, and that was great because I think they were the first uh, facility to actually rent space to healers on the hour that I know of, and it was very affordable. And then I was doing my Reiki circle in Madison Wellness, and eventually I just started doing everything in Madison Wellness because I got to know them and they got to know me and they trusted me. And Pat and Glenn were like my angels. I mean, they're really amazing, amazingly generous and wonderful people. He was a great chiropractor, but and they like to hold space for young people to have a chance to practice there. And but I got so I was doing all my treatments there, my readings, my classes, my special events, and everything. Did you have a space where you taught, or did?
That usually I taught in my own spaces. I did do a few things at TRS, and I had an external office for a while, just my own. And I found that my favorite space was in my home. and that was spinning like a top for decades. I loved it, and I could prepare before and not have to bother with travel time or um, stuff that might not have been so hot in one of these hourly places. So I kind of settled into my own space, and then COVID hit, and I never thought that I'd be attuning people in Berlin over the internet.
Yeah,
That I
same
could have
here.
never predicted. I was a purist. How could you possibly do something like that? How could you not touch them? How could you not look into their eyes and hold their shoulders and feel them? And then I learned a huge lesson that anything can be done remotely. Anything can be done, learning, teaching, attuning, but it was definitely a learning curve.
Yeah,
So since COVID, I tried to reopen in person a few times, but really it's all basically done, um, either on the internet or telephonically.
yeah,
Um, so we have to grow and change. And one of the positives of it was getting to meet people and serve people some of whom I've never even seen, but who still receive from Reiki and the records seamlessly. So we need to keep adapting and challenging ourselves. But if you would have
yeah,
said that I would be attuning people remotely in 2000, I would just shake my head and say, not for me. You know?
yeah. Exactly the same with me. And I am somewhat of a traditionalist, and people have been teaching Reiki online for at least 20 years because I would have people come into my Reiki circle. My circle was always open to anybody that's taken Reiki from a professional teacher.
Yeah,
And I had um, two people come that said that they had learned online. And I was like, okay, well, and their hands weren't warming up. I don't think they were attuned properly. And I would tell them, how would you like to get reattuned? And I just reattune them for free. And then they'd have the really hot hands. So I didn't have a good impression of teaching online. But then, of course, the pandemic happened, and like what the heck am I going to do now? I used to go to work, and then I had the job at Lower East Side Harm Reduction. That was a part-time job. I loved that. I was doing the ear acupuncture and the Reiki treatments for people with mostly drug addicts, and they loved it. I loved it, and I was getting paid a little bit more than minimum wage. But I had started as a volunteer. I never asked to get paid. They brought me up in the office and said, "Don't worry, you're not in trouble. We want to give you a stipend." I
it's
was like, "Oh,
great.
that's great."
That's
But
wonderful.
I would have my gig down at Lower East Side. I had to be at Madison Wellness Center. I do house calls. I do hospital calls. But during the pandemic, I did have some opportunities to to teach in other people's residences. And now I have people come to my apartment up here, and I have roommates. I mean, this is my little monk cell here. I'll
Wow.
attune people right in my room, you know, and if they want to, because I live way up in Inwood. This is kind of far out it's almost like the
Yeah.
suburbs up here. I'm up in the northern tip of Manhattan, but yeah, I will work in person when I can. But since the pandemic, most of the time, probably 90% of my work is online, teaching on video conference and then doing, I just had a client in London and we use WhatsApp and and
Right.
and you
WhatsApp is
can
great.
and you can
Yeah.
do WhatsApp video and you can do Facebook video and for
Hmm.
free and be with somebody anywhere in the world and work with them quite effectively. It's really great. I mean, you're saving so much money and time and energy. So, but
And you don't have to go
but
through Homeland Security.
yeah, Homeland Security and oh my God, don't get me started with the all this stuff and COVID and everything. It's just what we've been through is just mind-boggling. And really, Reiki got me through the pandemic. And I had people. Now, what happened was, here in New York City, I'll never forget that day, Friday the 13th in March 2000, New York City locked down. And then I was like, what the hell am I going to do now? And after a while, I said, well, I have this audio conference call thing that I've been using for some of my distant healing sessions. And I had always done my circle on Monday nights. So what I did was I decided to do a conference call, Reiki Circle. And I was getting a lot of people. I was getting 25, 30, 35 people. And now I only get like 15 or 20. But so many people were just like, what are we going to do now? And then, that became very popular. And I'm still doing it. And when I was doing it, I said, we're just going to do this for the next month or two until we flatten the curve. Remember, flatten the curve? And, and a year later, I'm still doing it. And that's when I started doing the free Angelica with Light sessions too. And I thought this is just temporary, and both became something that like I'll probably never stop doing. Every Monday night, you can from 7 to 8, you can do the conference call Reiki Circle with me, and we can do distant Reiki to each other and self Reiki treatment, and and I love doing the guided meditation. But it's yeah, I mean, and the changes that we're experiencing on the planet now are so fast and furious that your head is spinning. And thank God, I have Reiki as a tool to keep myself grounded and calm and not get caught up in all the political insanity and the cultural stuff that we're going through. That's really kind of scary. And but when we practice Reiki, we start to get peace of mind. We start to have inner peace, that's the most precious thing you can have in life, right? And that's the gift of Reiki for me. And not only was I able to get through the pandemic with some grace and gratitude, but I helped a lot of other people. And there's people that said, Jordy, I don't know what I would have done without your Monday night Reiki circle or you gave me a discount for the distant treatments and we did a series and it helped me, whatever, and yeah, I always use a sliding scale because if somebody really wants to work with me and they convince me that they need a discount or a sliding scale, yeah, I'll always do that. Always. Talk to me. What would you like to share?
What would I like to share? Well, there's plenty I'm happy to share. Um,
Okay. How about your Akashic Records readings? Because I know you want to talk about that. I know that's a big part of what you do now. And I am, I mean, I think that's an amazing thing to do. I mean, I can pick up some past life stuff with people. I can't say I'm a Akashic record reader, and I have a lot of respect for people that can really do that because it really is a special gift. So when did you start? Did you take training for that?
oh yes, a quickie on the background of it. I used to teach a lot in Atlanta, going back and forth from New York to Atlanta, and
Oh,
I met a lot of really interesting, the healers community there was actually much more cohesive in Atlanta. And so I met this woman who didn't call it the records, but half of her sessions were astrological and the other half she channeled. And as we were doing the channeling part, you have to come with questions, and then she just starts spewing the answers that she downloads. And when it was over, I realized we hadn't gotten to one or two of my questions because, like, she didn't close down the faucet too much during the, you know. Um, and then when I called her back, we got along really well. She wanted me to look at real estate there, so I would move there, and
Mhm.
I looked, but I decided to stay here in New York. But there was great rapport, but I just wanted to go back in for a bit, and she was very, very busy. And then I got this awareness that I could be doing this. And so I researched for a teacher and found one. I wanted a teacher of teachers because I didn't want to just mess around. I just wanted it. And so I had a session with her to see how she worked. And in the middle of the session, she said, "The records are telling me to teach you the records, and in return, you will give me weekly distant remote Reiki. That will be my fee." That came in during the session. So the records invited me, and my teacher was cooperating with their suggestion. And 5 years later, um, you know, uh, we still had that association, and then 10 years, and so on and so forth. And we're still connected, and we didn't even know what each other looked like for a long time until we started Skyping.
How long ago? How many? What was this, like 20 years ago
Maybe
or 30?
15, maybe 15. I'm not exactly sure. I should ask Bonnie. But so that worked out really well because she got to teach, I got to receive, I got to reciprocate with her, which was very important to me, but it was also financially not an issue because the records recommended that configuration. The records are really good for developing really worldly strategies. It's really good for healing us spiritually and emotionally, but also they provide actual steps to achieve certain things, either that you want to achieve or that comes out in a reading would be a next step. A great question for
Yeah.
them is, what's the next step in? And they will even tell you to do things like do this exercise, or for 2 weeks, release the question and go out and have a good time.
So, so wait a minute. Um, First of all, could you share the name of your teacher just for the benefit of our audience? Bonnie, uh,
Bonnie Oyen.
say your last name again?
Oyen. I think it's Oian.
Thanks. And now when you're now, I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the
Mhm.
records were just like a level of consciousness you could access to get information. But you're
Yes.
talking about it as if they're like your guides, you're saying they can tell you this and that.
Okay, well,
So,
yes, it's both. First of all, um, I joke and I call them my boys, but it's not boys. It's way beyond gender. Okay. But the records, almost everyone who does it will tell you that there's like a personality to it. And there are times when I feel like when someone makes a breakthrough, that it's almost like I can see all these faces smiling, or almost hear a round of applause. It's like a minion. And so every person experiences the records differently. Some people just see this library and actual books upon books. Some people receive clairaudiently. A lot of mine is clairaudient, and they'll show me pictures, and they'll give me feelings in my gut. So it depends how it's given to you, and each person receives it, in my observation, in ways that they can best receive and then channel it for the person. So it's I don't personally like saying they're guides, and I don't, but you might want to call it that. But the records are a source of information, and it's a record of everywhere your soul has been, thought, said, acted, every intention of every lifetime and dimension. At the same time, our concept of past lives is just what our brains need to characterize. Our brains handle things in a linear way. The
Yeah.
truth is that all lives are happening at once, and that future lives are already happening, and they discuss potential for a future life. But the truth is that there really is no time. That's how we have to process. So when we say that happened to me in a past life, well, yeah, it did, but that's just shortcut for somewhere on some dimension right now, that life's going on. We have to organize it in these little drawers, past,
Yeah.
present, and future, but the records contain the past, the future is plural. And in my opinion, healing is about making us well enough just to be in the present, which is all we have. So part of what they show us in their answers is to see things from a much wider perspective, and the issues that are torturing us or the patterns that are limiting us are lovingly presented to us from a greater zone with much more possibility. It's all unconditional love, which is where it intersects with Reiki, because this is another form from source of unconditional love for our healing and our knowledge. But for me, the records are the closest I experience as source actually speaking to us.
Right. So
Because there
it is,
are times, go
it's the
ahead.
divine mind, the divine heart accessing that infinity and eternity that knows everything and everywhere all the time. I see. Yeah, you just expanded my understanding of the records, and now I can access the records too,
Right.
because sometimes I am clairsentient. I just know stuff just out of thin air. I was never taught it. I just know it. People ask, "How do you know that?" I says, "I just know it." And
Anyone
by the
can do
way,
it. Anyone
um,
can access the records.
um, and the other thing is, Angelica with Light, which Wendy has actually, and I wrote in my newsletter, I said I was kind of like surprised and humbled that somebody on your level would want to take little old me, my little modality. That it's like I am
Why
thrilled
not?
that we work together, and that you were called to learn this modality after all the things you studied, and all the accomplishments. That is like that's a really big deal to me, and I'm grateful. But what I wanted to say is that I got that modality clairaudiently. It was given to
Mhm.
me by them,
Right.
the divine. I can't say that it was Buddha or him or the she or you know what I mean. It's just I just heard very clearly, and it was in my right ear. Angelic liquid light nutrients. And I was like, oh, that's, and I was channeling a vortex healing session, which is a modality that I took a whole bunch of levels in and I used for quite a while. And then I just kind of outgrew it. I realized this is not a good fit for me anymore. And I was actually channeling a vortex healing session with my colleague, Kara Ribner, who we collaborated for years and years and years. And I got to a certain point where I was like, I was by you're supposed to follow a certain protocol of vortex selling, which I kind of hated because I like to always just improvise. I said, no, I don't want to. I don't want to do the what was it? Divine lines, where you energize people. And I said, no, that just it just doesn't. There's something else I want. And then they told me angelic liquid light nutrients, and that was the beginning. I mean, it took several months for me to get the rest of the pieces of the modality, but yeah. So I was tapping into the records, you know,
Yeah, you're always
and
tapping into the records. And when you have a deja vu, that's the records. And the records are inside every one of your cells. The
yes,
records are located in the crystal grid of Gaia, of Mother Earth. The records are in there. And you, as you and I speak, we are changing and evolving the records. As you do a healing, as you receive a healing, you are changing and moving forward the contents of the record. So it is, even though it exists on this subtle zone that is not physical, it is a real thing that is always evolving. And then they come to you, Jordy, in the way that you can best receive it. And they are so brilliant and so multifaceted. I see it as this amazing diamond. And when you ask a question, one facet of that diamond melts into me out for you.
yeah,
And you,
that's
anyone
beautiful.
can do it.
It yeah, that's I knew that I forget what teacher it was that said, you know, one little cell, one little particle in your body has been cycling through the universe for eternity. And it has memory, it has feelings, it has the records in it. And now it's like, wow. So, and how many particles do I have just in my physical body? How many trillion particles?
And
And
always
that,
changing,
yeah,
you know? It's always in motion. We think all this stuff is solid and static. It's not. We're just
yeah,
seeing representations, but we're in a
yeah.
constant state of flux,
And
and
we are, yeah, we are not solid. We are light beings. And that's
we are
actually our
light.
not,
Yes,
yeah,
it's all in
we
the
are
light.
divine light.
And where we get stuck is our human brain gets stuck with patterns. And what the records do is they brilliantly detect a pattern that might be holding you back, that might have even been created in the womb. And if you ask, why have I had this pattern? Why can't I break it? They might say, um, tell you stuff from when you were in the womb and what you need to do to release it. Or it could have been from, a year ago. Or they sometimes will say, why do I behave like this? They almost joke sometimes. They say, it's a gift from the ancestors. You know,
Yeah,
like stuff gets passed through our
yeah,
DNA, and then how can we heal it? And then they'll answer that. So to me, it's like
yeah,
such a direct, they use the language that you speak. They'll also, they're talking to you because they'll say something to you that perhaps your mother used to say to you.
right.
And it lets you know that she might even be in on that session.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom, I have a very close relationship with my mom. And the uh the day she died was a Sunday, and we were doing Angelica with Light that night, and she was in a great retirement facility down South Jersey. And the one of the nurses called me up and said, you have to get down here. She's gonna go anytime. And there was no way. I don't even own a car, you know. I would have had to rent a car. And I was at my girlfriend's at the time, and she said, Jordy, why don't you just talk to her and tell her it's okay to go? And that's what I did. I said, Mom, they called me up, they told me it's like you're getting ready to go, and I want to tell you. it's your time, it's okay. And I had been telling her, it's like, you don't die, your soul just leaves your body and then you're going to be in heaven basically. And she understood that. And I had seen her 2 or 3 weeks before she died. She said, George, she reached out to me. She held my arm. She said, Jordy, I will always be with you. I
Oh,
said, that's right,
wow.
Mom. And then what
Oh,
happened was, um, that night, as soon as I started channeling, I saw her. And I don't call myself clairvoyant, but I saw her clear as like the hand in front of my face right now. And she had this big smile on her face and she had blonde hair, like when she was 30, she looked beautiful. And she was like smiling at me and shaking her head like, yeah, you were right. It's great here. I love it. And
that's
that
beautiful.
yeah, yeah, that made my day. And but that's how close our connection is that she could access me and I could see her. Because normally I don't see departed spirits, but I can feel them. And often when I'm treating somebody, especially in person, I will feel a presence behind me, and I will sometimes be able to tell who it is, you know. And and when they're connecting you from the spirit world, this is why I can't be a medium, because I just start to get very blissed out and the bliss tears start flowing down my face because I can feel what it feels like to be in the spirit world. It's very emotional for me, and very blissful because I can feel the divine energy from the heavens, coming into me. But yeah, and I wanted to make a comment about the what you said, which I totally agree with, is like all your lives are just happening in the present, future, you know, and that's your multidimensional self. It's your future self, your past self, your parallel self, your dimensional self. It's all one thing. And but one of my favorite teachers, Barbara Hand Clow, who's really influenced me astrologically, but also energetically, and also like I've incorporated. And if you ever take level 2 angelic with light, the two energies for healing and angelic with light, I got from her, and that's the zodiac polarity energies and the 9 dimensions activation energies. And but she said, and she was always like very conscious of the fact that we were entering the new age, the age of Aquarius, all that kind of stuff. And she said, we were gonna experience the end of time. And I was like, what the hell is she talking about? The end of time? Time never stops. But what she was talking about is, and now I'm experiencing that on a daily basis. I don't I
Me
have a lot of
too.
trouble. I have a lot of trouble with linear time. It doesn't
Me
really
too.
exist. I have to pretend that it exists. I have to keep checking write everything down in my phone with the alerts and everything, and I have to check it every day. Of course, uh, I'll just be in this like timeless state. I got one foot in heaven, the other foot on earth in linear time in like the Matrix.
I'm with
And
you.
now
I'm totally
I
with you.
totally get it. We are experiencing the end of time, and that
The end
that
of
is the
time
enlightened
as
state.
we had the end of time that we bought. And yeah, it's what we all bought into, which is
But
okay. It's just shifting.
yeah, but that's also the end of karma, because karma and time are very closely related, and that's why forgiveness is so important. That we can totally forgive, because when we forgive, then the karma is gone. Karma is just consequences. That's all it is. You know, and to learn the consequences of our actions, that's a big part of linear time, because you get to see when you do this, that happens, and then the ripple effect.
Cause and effect. It's
Yeah,
cause and
cause and
effect.
effect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so exciting. And it's the frustrating part of it is that we're like, why can't they see? Because you see people, they're still stuck in their issues and in the matrix and whatever you want to call it, and identifying with their issues. Then it's like identify with your true nature. Because when you start to identify with your true nature, you're free. Yeah.
But that's
You're
what healing is relocating, redefining our deepest nature, our soul, and clearing all the gook away to see if to try to get there. And I think that's the business we're in. But one of the things I've learned over time is I might have a hidden agenda for you to heal this way, but there's no room for my agenda. It's the rate that your soul needs to go. And it's not for me to judge or to even nudge you until and unless we you want what I'd like
Yeah.
to share with you. Like when I was younger, I said, oh, if he or she could only see this or that. But I have no idea what that soul really needs in that moment. All I see is this two-dimensional depiction of what it might be. But the truth is, I don't know shit. I'm just there to serve. I'm a servant. And
Yep.
the extent to which I can serve, I'm grateful, but I really don't know most of the whole story. In fact, when I teach level 1, I say, you see this finger? That's how much I know about myself. You know, there's so many other processes going on, and I'm like a worker bee, and whatever you could use from what I got to give, that's great. But I had to like roll back my own assessments, my own agendas, because I realized my perceptions were limited, and I'm still of service, but I have greater knowledge of the fact that I don't have that much knowledge. You know,
Yeah.
I'm much more
Yeah.
aware
That's,
that I don't know. Half the time, I'm just as amazed as anyone at visible results. Because the truth
absolutely. Yeah.
is, most of the stuff that goes on is pre-verbal, and we don't ever totally know what effect our contribution has. But one thing that grows is my trust and faith that when you share anything out of love, stuff has to be received on some level. And I don't
Yeah.
always even need to see the results anymore because I have
Yeah.
that much faith.
Yeah. I learned a lot of that stuff the hard way about agenda. And now there was a certain point, it's like, okay, I get it, no agenda. And that's the only way to proceed. It's really going to work for you and for anybody that you're of service to, is you just meet them where they're at, and you can't give them something that they don't want. It's not going to work. You may think, oh, if only they would do this, they'd be so much better off. Well, you know, that's not the way it works at all.
No,
Uh,
it ain't.
and
But it's
but
just fun to just be present, you know, just to be present with them. I'm very grateful that we have that opportunity.
yeah, and a lot of the times when people are really going through something hard, I just tell them everything's going to work out exactly the way it's supposed to. You don't have to worry. And because that's one thing I'm absolutely sure of. And I know it from my own life. And some of the worst things that I went through were actually, in retrospect, the best things that ever happened to me, because that crisis, that huge fuck up that I caused woke me the hell up. And that's what it took, was like a slap in the face, or some sort of crisis that I actually co-created, to wake me up. And you think, oh, this is the worst thing that ever, oh my God, how could this possibly happen? And then, well, there's like a huge silver lining. And there's a silver lining to everything that happens. It's all movements of divinity, everything. Nothing's
And it's
separate
also the
from,
way we perceive things,
yeah,
you know, and our perception does get expanded from observing all of this.
yeah. The other thing that really helped me, and this was a long time ago, earlier, and when I was first starting to really go like professional and everything, was, have you ever heard of Laurel Shantigaya, who
Oh yeah,
was
I
one
took a
of
workshop with her and Michael.
Michael Barrett? Yep.
Right.
I think we talked about her on the phone call the other
Yeah,
night.
yeah,
She had this stroke and it was really tragic. But
yeah.
they did some amazing work in the Utah prison, max security prison. Did you know about that?
No, I didn't.
Oh man, I mean, they got contacted by these prisoners, and this prison is famous. It's just like where they send the worst murderers, and it's super high security. They had a bunch of prisoners contact them and said, "We want to learn Reiki."
Wonderful.
And it took them like a few years to jump through all the hoops with the wardens and the blah 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 and this and
Yeah,
that. They
yeah.
actually went into that prison, and I think it was 13 prisoners. They gave them Reiki 1 and 2. They said it was
Wow.
an incredible experience. They said you could feel like angels coming in by, they said it was just like mind-boggling. And these were guys that were hardcore criminals, and they wanted to, they'd read about it online and they wanted to learn it, and
That's great.
Laurel and Michael did that, and just amazing. But Laurel said no attachment to results, and I was literally like, no attachment to, oh my God, that's it. We don't worry about the results because then you become a control freak.
Yeah.
And
I crave for people to feel better, and that would get in the way because you want them to feel better and to locate parts of themselves. But yeah, it's not about what you want.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Um, I think that's so wonderful to hear that about the prison. I always felt if we could give third graders Reiki, there'd be no wars and no crime,
yeah,
because to teach them ways of coping with the outer world, it would be a, a
yeah.
study in peace. Kids
Well,
can do it.
that
I've taught them.
yeah, the good yeah, I taught kids too, and I've had
Yeah.
students that were certified to teach that taught their children, and I mean, children are easy. Reiki is so incredible because it's so easy and so simple.
Yes. Yes.
And that's a lot of people don't like it because they think it must be more complicated to be able to do healing for people. You have to study for years and years and years and jump to all these hoops and pay thousands. No, you just get initiated. It's the attunement. The attunement is the center of the teaching because you're getting the download of the enlightenment energy that's started with Usui on Mount Karama, right?
Not who?
Started with
Start.
Usui on Mount Karama.
Oh, right, right, right,
Yeah.
right.
And I think I mentioned this the other night when we were talking, but that I really emphasize that now. The longer I teach, the more I realize this is an enlightenment lineage. First and foremost, also happens to work great as a healing touch modality because he got the enlightenment first, and then did you get the story that he ran down the mountain and stubbed his toe?
I've heard several stories.
He stubbed his toe, and then he's like sat on a rock, and then put his hands on his toe, and then oh my God, my hands were.
Yeah.
And that's how he realized he could heal with his hands. Maybe that was just made up to explain. I don't know, but
There's so many stories, and all of them are fun. But the main thing is that Reiki reemerged with him, and he was also at a point in his life where he needed to have an enlarged perspective. He had depression. He had some desolation. So his was truly a spiritual crossroads. And that's one of the things I love about this history of Reiki is that he was just a person who knew
yes,
there was more. And he was a very human individual who opened himself up and then became a conduit. And
yeah,
the rest, of course, we know. But I tuned into him once psychically, and I could feel his, in a certain moment, his desolation and also his renewal. And
Yeah.
that just makes sense, isn't it? That he was given that in that time.
Yeah, years and years ago, I had a student at Madison Wellness, and I got into that kind of channeling state, and I got the same information. I got very clearly that when he went up on Mount Karama, it was like, I don't want to live anymore unless I can be enlightened. He was willing to die up there. And that's what set him up for enlightenment, because he was willing to die.
And he was reborn.
And the story is that he actually got struck with spiritual light and passed out. That's, that's what's in my man. That's what I got through William Legrand. And he passed out and then woke up in the morning. He felt like totally rejuvenated. Whereas he felt he was weak, he was tired. He was like, I guess I'm not going to make it, and I give up. And literally, like the moment that he gave up, heaven was like, okay, now he's ready. Boom.
Yeah,
And he got enlightened. I mean, he went up there and it was like enlightenment or death, man. I got that very, very clearly. And
yeah,
his enlightenment was massive. And I love what you said about he was just a regular guy, you know. He had kids, he had a wife, and he was one of these guys that, like, he was always just curious about what's the real purpose of life, and he studied different religions and stuff. And then he wandered from job to job, you know, which that's what I've done in my life. I've lived on the fringes of society my whole life. I never even got a degree from college. But I was educating myself from around age 15 or 16. I was just reading spiritual books. That was my education. I didn't want a regular education. I didn't care about it. And I was valedictorian in my class in high school. I was a smart kid. But I uh, I identify with him, Also, he was a Leo, born August
uh,
15th, and I'm a Leo. And I'm part Japanese. But I get it, Grandpa, Usui, I totally understand, because I was at my wit's end too when I finally woke up, and then got a new lease on life. And my life is very clear, like before Reiki and after Reiki. And after Reiki is beyond my wildest dreams.
right.
Really,
Be-
absolutely. Because I learned to stay out of my own way, with my cravings and my cynicism and my anger about the state of all that stuff had to go. All that stuff had to be flushed down the toilet, and then I could be born again through the Reiki attunement process. And that sounds, I mean, people will listen to it and they'll go, oh, these guys are a little bit, uh, I don't care. I don't care what
I
anybody thinks
couldn't
about me.
care less. That's what being older brings you. It's like take it or leave it. For those of us who've taken it, it's life changing, and we're grateful. And when I was younger, I did care what people thought, but experience changes that, and you know the nature of what this is. And there aren't many things in the world that I've seen this pure as this energy.
Yeah. And that, I mean, he he hit a grand slam spiritual home run. He really did. And also he was ahead of his time, because, and the other thing I understand very clearly was he wanted Reiki to be available for everybody, regardless, you know. And that didn't really start to happen until the 90s. And my theory, and let me know what you think about this, is that now what it says in the manual was Iris Ishikuru, who was one of the Japanese Reiki teachers initiated by Takata, was the first person to start lowering her fees of all the 22 masters. And
My
because Takata
opinion,
was charging
yeah,
Takata was charging
yeah.
$10,000 for, and it wasn't spreading. But my theory is that, especially in America, the AIDS epidemic and the crack cocaine, the drug addiction epidemic, got so severe that the divine, whatever you want to call it, was like, okay, more people need to get this now. Come on, guys. And that's, I think in the 90s was when a lot of people were getting trained either very affordably or even for free, especially people in social services. And how does that sound to you? Does that sound
I
accurate?
agree, and I'd like to expand it if you don't mind. I think actually Dr. Hayashi expanded it first because he gave discernible hand position organization that made every person feel free to do it. So he was the first, to me, person to help make it accessible to everyone, because Yasui didn't get that part done. So I think he was a very important. I think Diane Stein had the balls to publish the symbols, and she would attune people at mass weekends and do 120 people at once, and I'd say, Diane, you taught it all in 3 days from one up until master. She said, yeah, read the book. I gave you the attunement, now read the book. But she had the guts to do it that way, and that was a huge, that brought it to so many people. And then we needed it, yes, for the AIDS epidemic. And at that point too, historically, people were getting fed up with just the medical model, and there was more room to get more answers. And so I think all of these were factors that Hayashi regimented it so that people could feel they've learned it. And then um then it was published and going wild, and now it's just as commonly known as almost any way of,
It's like practically mainstream now.
it's
And
mainstream, yeah.
that's
But I
Usui's
do
wish came
remember
true.
when it was not. you know
Yeah. Yeah, Usui's wish came true 100 years after he died. Now it's
yeah,
available for everybody. I was in India for a month in 2010, and there was Reiki sign. We have Reiki here. Oh, this is like way out in the boonies. I mean, my girlfriend and I were in parts of India. We didn't see any tourists, any other white people at all. But there were Christian churches, and there was also Reiki signs. That's just a. I was like, oh my God, this is wonderful.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I'm not saying that everybody has to be Christian and accept Jesus Christ as a personal savior. I mean, I love Jesus. I have no problem with Jesus at all. And but I also, realize that organized religion has its shortfalls and doesn't always stay true to the original teachings of Jesus. I think a lot of them were lost, But
Yeah,
yeah, I love all religions, absolutely. I have no
me too.
problem
There's
with any
something
religion.
in
Yeah.
all of it, in most of them. And I feel like I would always want someone to feel comfortable with what they believe in, but I always tell them Reiki is the best that nature has to offer. And whoever you believed created nature created Reiki.
That's great. I love that.
That's my pitch.
Yeah. Yeah. And, teaching in New York City is great because we get people all shapes, sizes, colors, religions, no religion. Uh,
Yeah,
I, I train nurses, doctors, people from Wall Street, and like hardcore hippies and it's, I mean, to this day, it's mostly women too, which I didn't expect that. You know what I mean? It's like I get more guys now and I get the gay guys, but men are really opening up to this much, much more easily now. And
just
that's a good
beginning,
thing.
just
Yeah.
beginning. Yeah,
Yeah. That's a wonderful
yeah.
thing.
It
I
is.
have a strong feminine side, and that's something that was really suppressed. And then when I got in recovery from drug addiction, then it came out, and it was scary at first because I felt like one big raw nerve that was sensing everything all around me all the time, and it took me a while to get comfortable with that. That was my highly sensitive, empathic, psychic, natural state, and now I realize this is power. You know,
Yes,
to
I'm
to
so
be
happy
sensitive.
for you that you didn't have to cover it up anymore, you know?
I came out of the
That's
closet.
beautiful. Yeah,
I mean,
beautiful.
I'm not having sex with guys. I still am much more attracted to women, but but I've always had gay friends. I have no problem if you want to be trans gay. That's beautiful. It's fine with me as long as you're not hurting anybody. You
Right.
know. But yeah, it's that's New York City is like the ultimate melting pot as far as I'm concerned. And
I
I
love it.
remember I'd only been teaching like 2 or 3 years, and I counted people from 30 different countries that I trained. 30, you know, people not born in the United States that they're in New York City, and I absolutely love that. I love the diversity. I love the color. I love the different viewpoints, and it's very enriching, and very
Plus, you learn
uh,
stuff even through people coming from a different language, different thought processes. And so in class, we're always students of our students.
that's right. Absolutely, yeah.
So you get a lot of different takes from different culture. It's very
Let,
exciting.
let's back up a second. You said Diane Stein attuned 120 people all at once
Yeah,
rather than
well,
individual.
let me tell you how it worked. So, they would come to these weekendy Woodstocky things, right? And so, I mean, there's a lot of funny stuff, but I gotta edit this. Basically, so there'd be like 120. So she'd sit down maybe 15 at a time in the chairs, right? And there are actually videotapes of some of this that do exist, but so she'd open them up, go down the line, close them up, go down the line, blow, go down the line, and then she'd get them off the chairs, and then the next group came in, until the 120 were done. And at the, she
But
um
that could take hours.
Not, it didn't. It took a while and it was exhausting, but it was exhausting. And her feeling was, she really she has such strength of character. Um, Her goal was to get as many people in the world attuned as possible. Plus, she doesn't like traveling. So it was really hard on her, to go to this place in Pennsylvania that was all muddy and, uh, you know, do these attunements. It wasn't like the easiest thing, but her goal was she was steadfast in her goal and she has attuned so many people in this way. And the first book that she wrote, Essential Reiki, now publishers would turn that into 3 books so that everyone could make more money. It was all there, you know. Um, she's written many, many other books since, but um, yeah, she would tune 120 people at an event, and then if there were
That's
any
amazing.
gaps, they just got to read the book. But I loved her for having that goal. I mean, if I, into the next lifetime, I don't know what my jobs will be, but I've always wanted to see Reiki in schools, which is
Yeah.
like an extension of what she wanted so that people would learn how to feel and think and process in a peaceful, loving, creative way, which is one of the things that it's a peace, it's a vehicle for peace.
Absolutely.
And yeah,
I want to share something because this is probably about at least 10 years ago, maybe even longer. I read an article about these guys down in Baltimore who went into and they had studied yoga and meditation, right? And they went into the local elementary school and they said, listen, we would like to teach yoga and meditation. And what happened was the kids that would have to go to detention because they were problem children, they would get sent not to detention, but to meditation yoga class.
wow,
And yeah, and it was incredibly successful. They said these
wow.
kids like absolutely loved it. And it got so there were no suspensions anymore. And it just like changed the whole energy of the whole school. And so there are precedents set for this, that this could be taught in schools eventually. And at
Wouldn't
least
that be
some
great?
schools.
That'd be
But
so great.
we are, one thing I know for sure, and I've known that since I had a visionary experience on my first Saturn return, 1981, 29 years old. That's your first Saturn return. That's when Saturn returns to where it was when you were born. Big deal. It's a big graduation for everybody. Everybody goes through that. I had a vision of like World War III starting in the Middle East, and then um, the nuclear weapons and I was in like a deeply altered state. The nuclear weapons are being shot off. There's this huge wave of like destruction and hatred and violence coming at me, and it's just about to like envelop me and like kill me. And the Kundalini rises into my heart chakra, and it's just like this whoosh of like a huge river of divine love, just like neutralizes all the bombs in the
Beautiful.
Middle East.
Wow.
And from that day on, I always knew that we were going to enter the new age. There's not going to be any World War III. There's not going to be any like mass trauma event, pole shift, any of that doom and gloom. We are going to make it, and we're really that's where we're headed. You know, the information I have now is by 2032, we will have made it into the golden age, and that all collective trauma on this planet will be healed. So things are really accelerating now. They really are. I
I
can
see
feel it,
the,
you know.
I feel the gold is already forming. I just feel, I can almost feel like the edges of this golden light. Um, I don't, I don't have a year in mind, but I feel like things are coagulating now.
Yeah, and everything's coming together very nicely. And that's why I told my partner, I told TJ Thomas, my partner, my girlfriend, beginning this year, I said, honey, we don't really have anything to worry about ever again. And the only thing I ever really worry about is money. And I've learned enough about money since I've been in recovery so that like I know if I worry about money, I'm pushing that money away. That's really the only thing that like if my practice gets slow, I'm like, oh my God, I hope I can pay all the bills this month. You know what? Ever since I started, and when you take that leap into full-time practice, I call it like walking the tightrope. And that tightrope is made of faith. My mantra every day was, "Uh, I'm always going to have everything I need. And you know what? I have always had everything I needed. I've always been able to pay the rent. I've always been able to have everything that I need, food, clothing, shelter, and more. I mean, the stuff that I've done, the charity work that I've done and stuff, it's like, how did I even manage to do this? It just happened for me because I was staying out of my own way, you know? I
Yep.
learned how to stay out of my own freaking way. I just let go and let God, you
That's the
know?
name of your book.
My book is going to be called Reiki Awakening, and I'll tell my whole story. And hopefully, I'm almost finished with my first book, and it's called Sitting with Sensei, and it's conversations with a Reiki master. And it's fictional, but it's all based on my own experiences. So
Sounds good.
it's almost done. But we've been talking for almost an hour and 40 minutes, and I think we're just about done, but I want to give you the space to share anything more that you would like to share. And then I think we
Well,
should call it a
I'd like to express my gratitude to all of the Reiki teachers I've had and all of my Reiki colleagues, um, and all of my students and my clients. I'm equally grateful to all. And I just want to say that I feel blessed by all of you and would always hope to return the blessings in any way possible. There's a ton of other things I'd love to say, but let's just cap it off at that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wendy. I mean, this is, I know this will be great, and it really has been great. It actually went in a whole different direction than I expected. And that's usually happens. You know, that's usually how things happen. It's like when I sit down to write, I'll be like, oh, I want to write about this, that, and the other. Then I start writing, it goes off in a whole other direction. That's the creative process, you know. It's just
Right.
stay in the moment and let go and let it fly. And I have tremendous respect for you. I have
Thank you.
tremendous love for you. You are incredible. You're amazing. And I am so blessed to have you as a colleague and to have you as an A-team member when we do our Angelic Will Light sessions. That is just like I'm over the moon for that.
Thank
And
you.
so
Thank you.
now, if you want to get in touch with Wendy, her links are in the write up down below here on
Oh,
YouTube.
good.
And she's here in New York City and she's available and she'll do your your Akashic
Yeah.
Records reading and your healing for you and everything. And and she's one of the best at what she does. She really
Thank
is.
you.
There's no doubt about that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jordy. I knew I would enjoy this, and I certainly did. And thanks to everyone listening.
God bless.
Listening.